My name is Steve Williams. I'm with SAP here in Vancouver. SAP is an interesting story. We're a global software company. We have about 60,000 employees around the world. We have 1,300 people in Vancouver. But we started off here in Vancouver as Crystal Decisions. I've been with the company for 10 years, and Crystal Decisions was a Canadian company that was acquired in 2003 by Business Objects, who was a French company, who was acquired again in 2008 by SAP, who was a German company. So I've worked there for 10 years in 6 different legal entities in 3 countries, so it's kind of an interesting kind of life. And we are almost, but not quite, a living wage employer. So I want to talk a little bit about why we did that, or why we're doing that, and some of the ways that we've tried to contribute to the campaign. And the living wage is really an interesting combination of both the economic impact and the social impact. It's driving the economic benefit in the communities in which we live. We believe we have a responsibility to do that. There's also a social part of that, about what are we actually contributing to the society in which we live. So as a large organization, we have a couple of interesting challenges becoming a living wage employer. One is that everyone that works for us that actually collects a direct SAP paycheck, at least in Vancouver, almost guaranteed is being paid a living wage. But if you think about the 1,300 people that are in our location, about 1,100 of those are full-time staff, and the other 200 to 300, depending on the year, are interns and contractors. And a lot of them may or may not be getting paid the living wage. We also have a lot of outsourced contractors. So exactly the same list that Jamie had up on the screen there, facilities, security, the parking lot, all those kind of things are outside contractors. So what we did a couple of years ago was start to look at what are the actual wages that we're paying all those different sort of classes of workers. And we took some of the language that Michael and team have put together in the living wage campaign and put that clause into the RFP. So we did a request for proposal for our latest facilities contract. It was included in the bid that if you were going to apply to be one of our facilities contractors, you had to be paying your staff a living wage. And then when we signed our latest contract, which went into effect on March 1st, that new vendor has that living wage clause. So all of our facilities people are being paid a living wage. We're not yet on the living wage employer list because we haven't gone through all the lists. We actually have quite a number of those different contractors, and also looking at the interns and so on that we have in place. But we're very much committed to doing this, both from the sustainability side, but one of the really big things not to lose sight of is exactly what Jamie talked about with the human element. As a big company, this was kind of driven by myself and a couple of other people in Vancouver that really wanted to make this happen. So SAP Vancouver has tried to become a living wage employer, and our director of North American facilities is based down in California. And he was up for a visit, so we were doing a pitch to him. We got some material from Seth and from Michael about sort of trying why this is a good idea. But it was really interesting. Within about the first 30 seconds of the conversation, he was like, yeah, okay, what do we need to do to make it happen? Like, we had this whole presentation, we were all ready to go, and he didn't even want to look at it. He was like, okay, what do we need to do? But his reasoning was that human element. He said, for him, that the biggest thing is seeing people like us that work at a software company that get paid good wages, that don't even look at the people that are cleaning their desks and walk right past the security guards without saying hello. And for him, it was really that human element and that sign of respect for just another human being. And this is a way that you can actually bring that respect forward and make that visible. So it was a really interesting thing that I was expecting a hard fight against someone his job is saving money around, because that's, I guess, another challenge that we have as a large organization. We have 60,000 people in 55 countries, hundreds of offices. And one of the goals of a global company is to reduce the number of contracts we have, so we don't have to deal with thousands of contracts we're doing all the time and trying to save money. So on one hand, you've got that drive to get to a very, very small number of global contracts. On the other hand, you've got all different cities that people want to pay from local employers to support the local economy. So there's always that kind of tension back and forth. So for us, it has been really important to find some of those allies inside of our company that really have the same values and align on that. So our plan is to get SAP Vancouver to be that living wage employer, and then start to roll out across other cities across Canada, and eventually through the States and to other regions. It'll be very interesting because we have employees, the bulk of our employees are in Germany, which also has very progressive labor laws. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of rolls out. So what you're seeing here is a calculator that can help an employer understand what it actually means to become a living wage employer and what that actually costs. So on where that 8 is, Michael, maybe you could just type in $10 there. So the first thing to start is what you're actually paying your employees today. So if we were paying our employees $10 an hour, right now the living wage is $18.81, which means there's actually a gap of $10.81 between what we're paying our employees in cash and what the living wage is. And that's a pretty big gap. But there's other things in addition to cash that add value into that. So for example, if we click in that we pay all of our MSP premiums for our employees, and say that we give people annual health care of, say, $1,000, and we give them an extra, say, 40 hours, so we get an extra week of vacation, so 40 hours of that. So what we've done is look at calculating what are the dollar value equivalent of that. So that actually adds up to $1.98 in non-mandatory benefits. This is over and above what's legally mandated that we're paying to our employees. So that means that's a net benefit that we're actually paying our employees there's a net difference of $6.83. So every time you add some of those benefits, you're actually lowering the gap between the cash value and what the limit wage is. I mean, for a small business, that can be difficult to make that jump from $8 an hour to $18 an hour. So the reason we created this calculator is to start to talk to employers about there's ways you can actually move towards that and getting that value paid by looking at what are the benefits that you offer your employees. It's not just cash. It's about paying their MSP. It's about looking at the total vacation days. It's about looking at their medical care and the benefits they have available to them. And cash is only a component of that overall amount. Jamie, sorry, Michael, are we able to see the policy one? Actually, can you click on this side on there? Does that bring it up? No. Okay.
Still initializing.
Okay. So if you can imagine here, so this calculator, by the way, is on the Living Wage website. So if you go to livingwageforfamilies.ca, there's a link to it on the main page. You can play with that and see what your own employer would look like. Another one that's not quite done yet that hopefully will be live soon, we've looked at mapping out the components of the living wage. And this information you can find on the Living Wage website as well. They've mapped out what component of that $18.81 is shelter, what's food, what's childcare, what's transportation, what are those different components. And what we did is built a calculator that shows what would be the impact if we had a national affordable housing program. What would be the impact if we had a realistic childcare program? What would it look like if we had affordable food programs? And you can see the difference in what each one of those, what that drops down to. And even with things around tax relief with the income level cutoff, which is really strangely punitive for a lot of low-income families. So the really interesting thing is when you look at all those components put together, it drops the living wage down to, I think it was $9.83. So there's a huge policy impact of that at the municipal level, at the provincial level, and at the federal level. So I guess that was all the things that I wanted to close with.